G'day everyone, welcome to Simpa Says, and today I have the absolute pleasure of having somebody I've known for a couple of years now, Dr. Ian Hoyle, who has the best job in the world and is officially retired now. Ian, welcome to the show, mate.
After I started work at 28 and now I'm 66, so whatever that calculates out to be. Yes, George.
Many years.
Retired last week.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's just kick off let's go back to when you were in school. What did you actually want to be when you grew up?
Oh gosh. So I was always a bit of a sciencey nerd, even in primary school and high school. I used to love getting astronomy books. I developed a fascination for physics. I was always pretty exceptionally good at mathematics. So it was always down that track. You could not possibly ask me to write creative writing for English because that was just like a death spiral. It never worked for me at all. So yeah, it was always science, and that carried through into my first uni degree.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that because obviously you did. It was geophysics, right?
Well, my first degree was actually theoretical physics at the University of Wales.
Okay.
Still living at home for those period of 4 years, and physics was my love, and I came within a bee's dick of going on to do a PhD in astronomy, but I chose not to. Okay. So I thought, wow, it'd be nice to get some money. It'd be nice to be employed. So I did a bit of a pivot.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's yeah. It would be nice to be employed. So obviously, you talked a bit about that, and it's interesting that you actually followed that path into science. Did you actually have any work as a teenager at all that led into that gave you some skills? Or?
My first job was as a paper boy at our local newspaper, and then mid-high school I got a job in a local small hardware store. Worked there from about the age of 15 right through to when I left home at 22, which was, my dad was always a bit of a handyman. I kind of adopted that trait and used to love working in that store. It actually brought me, I think, closer to just the average person, plumbers, tradies, just who would come into the store getting their wares. So it had a big influence on my early life, I think.
Oh, that's cool. It'd be interesting to see. We'll come back to that later when we talk about some of your work. But it'd be interesting to see if you think some of those skills actually helped you in your day-to-day work life as well.
Very much.
Yeah.
So I did my first degree while I was still at that hardware store, and my father challenged me to be able to describe my PhD to a plumber. And I test drove it a few times, and I was able to successfully do that. And I think that knack of distilling down complex concepts and just making them navigable and understandable by people that aren't necessarily right into the technology is a trait that really, really served me well, particularly in my Microsoft. Well, I used it heaps in BHP, but particularly when I was in the sales teams, which was kind of a weird career progression, but we'll probably get to that.
Yeah.
When I was in Microsoft.
Yeah. And for anyone listening, I think that is definitely a very valuable trait. There are a lot of people I've worked with or work with who really struggle to take complex scenarios or technical topics and then explain them in a way that really anyone in the room can understand. Definitely, there you go. I always say it's interesting finding work and doing work when you're younger, whether it's customer service or things like that. So obviously you only did your degrees and got your PhD, which is pretty cool. And the first role, what I see on LinkedIn, which was with BHP. And for those who don't know BHP, it's a pretty big company. I think most people would know it. It is an Australian resources company. Senior research scientist was what you've got listed in here. Was that the first sort of full-time role you had?
Yeah, it was, George. So back in those days, BHP. So BHP back then, it was a company that had a big steel business, petroleum business, mining. It's one of the world's largest resource companies. And they funded a set of 3 research laboratories in Australia. So there was one in Melbourne, one in Port Campbell, one in Newcastle. and about 600 people. And it was almost like a private university. Around half of the people there were PhDs. It was
Okay.
it was ridiculous. And doing all kinds of chemical engineering, railway engineering. They had a part of the business that incinerated fake buildings to see how they would go under being torched by a fire. And I was in a new group that was set up to do image processing because part of my PhD was essentially used electrical engineering signal analysis for the purposes of in geophysics. But so I was in a signal processing / image processing research group, and that was my first gig at the research labs.
That sounds pretty interesting. So how did you find yourself transitioning? I mean, you did that for quite a while, obviously 8 years you were doing that, but how did you find yourself transitioning to IT from that?
It actually goes back to when I was at the University of New England to do that PhD, which is in northern New South Wales, in country New South Wales, had to write all the computer code to do the analysis. That was in Fortran or Pascal back in those days.
Pascal.
The university had just invested in a pair of incredibly dumb low-end graphics terminals. So I wrote a lot of code to visualize the data, and I kind of just slow. And there was the precursor of the internet in Australia was something called ACSNet, which is the Australian Computer Science Network. And it used to link up all of the university campuses, CSIRO, and also the first few Aussie businesses that popped onto the internet. And I kind of got really interested in Usenet news groups and a bunch of other things when I was at the university. And I took that love to the research labs, and I got the labs hooked up to ACSNet back in 1988, and then hooked onto the very, very, very beginning of the internet in Australia back in late 88, early 89. So that love of that, I used to manage all of the mail, all of the network news, did all of the early web stuff. I ran one of the very first websites with code that came from CERN out of Switzerland. So yeah, I was in the Australian Internet Working Group that put it all together.
Oh, that's cool. I do remember some of those groups early on when I first started playing with the internet. I can't remember when it was before I finished high school, so it would have been around those years as well. So.
Sort of dial-up services, CompuServe, and other things like that. But yeah, they kind of fell by the wayside as a fully connected 24 by 7 model took hold.
I think my first one was Melbourne PC User Group or something. It was it was cool. It was cool. All right, cool. So basically, that natural passion that you got from that opportunity drove you into IT.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. So was that just was it a job role within BHP IT that you saw that came up?
It was quite strange. I became so passionate about doing that IT stuff that I was made out of the blue head of computing at the research labs.
Okay.
My boss said, Ian, we need to refresh and get new machines. You can do it. So I worked with a bunch of consultants in BHP IT that worked in the corporate part of BHP to get a thumping big new VAX computer, a really big Unix machine. And along the way, when I was still in the image processing group, we ran a small fleet of enormous silicon graphics workstations. So the machine that sat on my desk and sort of beside it was a $250,000 graphics workstation. Less power than you'd get in your average PC that you'd buy at JB or Harvey Norman now. But that's what it was like back then. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the size of all those machines. Massive. Oh, that's cool. And I mean, that sort of aligns very well with a lot of what I hear, in that sometimes you just need to do the job and before you actually even get the job, get yourself ready for that opportunity.
Yeah,
so
we can sort of focus in a bit on this maybe later as to how I've got some of the jobs and roles over time. But yeah, I was in the right place at the right time with what was happening in the market. It just lit up a passion within me like crazy. And then I had moved from the research labs to BHP's corporate IT team and was helping cement that internet stuff within BHP. And then I decided I wanted a bit of a change and I joined an internet service provider for
Okay.
for 4 years. And that was, you could probably see it in the LinkedIn thing, Connect.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I can see that. Connect.com.au. Wow, that would have been very interesting doing that role
I was.
as an ISP. Yeah.
Yeah. We saw the rise of Telstra and their Big Pond service, and there was a really crazy market, very small startups, companies jumping in, trying to fund them, put investment money in there. It was like the Wild West.
Yeah, I can imagine. So that then led you. So you did that for almost 4 years. Then you went back to BHP or BHP Billiton,
Yeah.
in this case, and again, really focusing on IT, regional lead infrastructure, principal architect technology. So take the viewers through. What do you think were some of the skills that you feel like you'd built up until that point that really put you in a position to not only get the roles that you looked at, but also be successful in those roles?
So in that period of 8 years, from around the year 2000 up to 2008 at BHP, I was the technical lead for some very large infrastructure projects that we rolled out globally. First of which was a brand new global network. So I dove into the technology. I worked with some commercial people to choose a global provider, which was Equant, which turned into Orange Business Services, and worked really closely with them. There was a rollout of Active Directory, there was a rollout of Exchange, and these are clearly all Microsoft technologies. So I think that the stuff that we spoke about earlier about being a strong communicator and being able to explain the tech was really important, because at the end of the day, you're trying to convince people to open their wallet and fund big projects. The rationale why it's super important to do it, particularly if you're talking and asking for several $1 million, that I think was really important. I was able to, my love of tech and understanding of tech and my rapid ability to kind of assimilate and understand new technology also served me well. So when I needed to learn about MPLS networking, bought a few books from Cisco, I had to learn that. When I needed to learn and understand Active Directory and how that was going to be deployed, I kind of got under the skin of that. So, yeah, I think that was, but then, more important than anything was getting people to understand it. There was a key moment, George, that I remember. I used to have a strong belief that I can just be really energetic. I work with people, I'll make it all happen, and it'll be good. And my boss walked into my office one day and he said, "Ian, we're not going to do that. We're going to get you a project manager." Because at that point, it hadn't been going so well, just trying to drive it by pure energy alone. I'm diagnosed on the spectrum. I just not outrageously well organized, and some of the process-driven stuff that you need to do just didn't work for me. I can't do it. So it was a life-changing thing to have my boss pair me up with a professional project manager, and it was like a yin and yang thing. He complemented all of the things that I was crap at, and the things in terms of understanding the technology that she needed to know to do her thing. I was able to do that for her, and we became best mates to this day. 25 years later, it was a huge change and really important, I think, in me being successful doing those big projects.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. It is good hearing about. It's one thing achieving something yourself, but when you achieve it with another person, with a team of people, they're the things you really remember.
Yeah. We built a small team. We kept that team integral to a rolling set of projects because they wanted the work. But they were really good at what they did, and we just kept using them.
Awesome. Take me through the opportunity that then led to initially getting a role at Microsoft.
Politics at BHP, and a new CEO came in that was ultimately just a madman, but he changed fundamentally the structure of the corporate IT team, which is where I sat. He decided to move it to Singapore. He decided to downsize it from about 80 people down to 20 people, shuffled it off to Singapore, and I was made redundant. So there was a period of just a couple of months where I was, assessing what the hell I could do, what I wanted to do, and out of the blue, an opportunity came up to apply for a role at Microsoft. I'd established really good relationships with people in the Microsoft Melbourne office because of just everything that we did at BHP. I was pretty well regarded technically. So I applied for a role as what was then and still is called an account technology strategist in the Melbourne sales team. So I applied and got the gig. Yeah, it was great. I didn't like being out of work particularly, but getting into Microsoft was a little bit of a dream because one of the preeminent IT technology companies on the planet. That was a place I wanted to be.
That's awesome, mate. It's a really cool story, especially having quite a few people, unfortunately, in the similar position to what you were, being made redundant over the last 6 months or so. So hopefully some of them can see this and maybe get a bit of inspiration that they'll get their opportunity as well.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it'll be the people. Have a good think about the people, the culture of the place where you want to go. If you're able to somehow work that out. But yeah, for me, it was a big success.
That's awesome, mate. So take me through your journey through Microsoft. You had various roles. I mean, over the years, I think you obviously started off as an ATS, then you're an enterprise architect. I think that's when you and I first met.
Yeah.
When I used to be in services, chief digital advisor, as client technology specialist. I still remember when you went to that role, you were so excited about it. Threat management technical specialist, security and compliance technical specialist, and then you sort of went back to your roots where it was senior security technical specialist again. Take me through your journey and what did you enjoy the most out of that, and what sort of lessons have you learned over your years?
Let's tackle the first one, which is the ATS role. I joined having never been in a form. It was a sales role in the sales team. So the way Microsoft does it, they've got an ATS as the technology dude, and then they've got the account manager that manages the commercial relationship with customers. The role has changed a bit now over the last 15 odd years, but it's kind of still pretty much the same. So I was the technical guy in that. The Southern commercial team was really great to be a part of. There was about 10 of us, all became mates, all good, close working relationships. It had a really good vibe, and I really enjoyed it. Over time, I think what happened was the process-driven, sales-driven requirements of the role, because of the autism, just got away from me. I just did not like them. And I was underperforming doing what I was doing. And then I elected to move out of that area into Microsoft Consulting Services in a fairly young team that had been put together to do enterprise architecture consulting for companies. Now, I kind of was able to jump into that because my title back in BHP was as an enterprise architect. If you really kind of picked apart exactly what I had been doing there to how the market formally regards an enterprise architecture role, it had nothing to do with it. But nevertheless, I joined that team, went to Seattle, got a bunch of very good training. It was populated by a bunch of really seasoned, experienced people globally, because there were people doing several hundred in the function around the world. It was a great place to be. And I did a bunch of consulting gigs for some government departments over in Perth, so I was getting out and about and doing that craft. But again, the way the role was designed was that not only did you have to be good at the technology, but you almost had to be like your own project manager, run a consulting gig with customers. And we spoke earlier about that being a big hole in my personality and my inability to do that. And I came unstuck again, each time after about 4 years. And I remember having a conversation with my manager at the time, and he said, "Ian, it's clearly not working, but I reckon there's a role over there that will be perfect for you." And it was. That was the point. It was a really huge moment, George, because that actually allowed me to circle back to my roots as being an individual contributor, as a technology specialist. I'm a nerd, a geek. The individual contributor role, not managing people, is just you're responsible for how you are as a person. And in the specialist team unit, as a Windows TS, and I had this abiding love of Windows. Yeah, that's what I did. And that was a big seminal change for me.
Mm.
I went to the Windows 8 airlift in the US. Had to come back to Australia with Macca to
That would have been interesting. That would have been fun
to
with Mega.
customers about this brand new thing that we were bringing to market called Windows 8. So it was great. I really, really loved doing it.
That's awesome.
And then just to the next big thing that happened was, unbeknownst to the Windows TSs, was that a team in Israel had been madly beavering away creating a security product embedded in Windows, engineered by the Windows engineering team at the time, called Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection, WDATP. And they flew about 30 of the Windows TSs that they had selected from the countries around the globe to go to Tel Aviv for a week for an airlift for that new product. And it was life-changing to go there, made a huge number of very close friends, and came back to Australia, and my boss said, right, we're going to spin up a new role for security. You're it.
There you go.
So it was, again, one of those I was in the right place at the right time kind of moments. But that was the start of the security journey.
Okay.
The other the roles that you saw in that list that you read out, basically every couple of years the business or the marketing teams decide to change the name of things.
Yeah.
Never really changed what it was. It was a security technical specialist in its distilled pure form.
So that's cool. And that does sound familiar. You haven't really changed roles. It's just, titles change slightly. Yeah. It's like Microsoft's products. Every 5 seconds is a different name for something. All right. Well, that sounds awesome, mate. It sounds like you've had a pretty cool journey at Microsoft. And yeah, right place, right time, but definitely building those skills up so that you're ready for it when it comes up, right? Yeah. So let me go through a couple more things. So one of the things I always ask everybody is, I personally have a set of values that I've tried to follow throughout my career. One of them's, first one's passion. I need to have some sort of passion for what I'm doing. If I've got no passion, it's what am I doing here? The second one's purpose. So there has to be a reason for me to be here. If I'm not really doing anything that has any purpose, I don't find any point continuing to do it. And the last one is helping others, which is why I tend to end up in education in most cases. So did you have any sort of career values that you followed throughout your career?
Yeah, I think so. I would love to be regarded, I always wanted to be regarded just as being a decent human being, so that my relationships with others was, on a decent footing. I try to care for others. I try to look after people. I really enjoyed mentoring newbies that would come through the door into our team. It's a team that attracts people, but we've also had some changes and people moved on to other roles in Microsoft and externally. So I used to love doing that. I've always liked teaching, George, and the rhythm of my day would start over breakfast, where I would check out LinkedIn, I would check out Twitter, I would pick up particularly new Microsoft blogs, and I would forward on that information internally to the Aussie large extended security team. I would post them, because marketing were crap at doing them themselves. It always seemed to be me to post them to the internal distribution lists for the individual products at Microsoft. Yeah, so the education thing, I just like being helpful for others. Yeah. The security stuff, it always blew my mind how innovative it was at such a furious cadence. The marketplace is really moving at such a huge rate. It's really dynamic. There's so much competition between these world-class vendors that we need to... I'm ex-Microsoft. Microsoft needs to release world-class product to compete.
Yeah.
And that team of people over in Israel primarily, and Seattle to a degree, has done that. But one of the sustaining things I always used to do along the side was I had all of these side hustles going on outside and to the edge of my formal role. I used to love getting involved in stuff in Seattle or just in other places. That was more than anything, I reckon, that kept me going and kept me super interested in what I did.
Awesome, mate. So would you say The other two questions I always ask is, what was a highlight of your career and what was a low light of your career?
The Israel trip, I think, was a seminal moment for me in terms of the success of how you are in Microsoft is often driven by making that personal network of extended relationships, not only locally, but if you can foster it internationally. And I left Microsoft having a ton of people I know on just about every continent, that was really awesome, I think. So that, the Israel trip was a highlight. Being in the security business as a specialist in such a dynamic market was great. Low light, I think. But Delolo was definitely semi-failing at those first two roles and getting right to the edge of probably being asked to leave Microsoft because I hadn't done well at them by the end of that period. And in a sense, I was in the right place at the right time to move into something else that kept me going. But at the same time as thinking I failed, I achieved a lot of clarity in what I was good at and where I had shortcomings, and to not necessarily try and convince myself that I can overcome the shortcomings just by trying to be a different person. In the end, I think doing the individual contributor security technology specialist role, I was more true to myself, which allowed me to be good at what I did in the last 8 years of my working career. So I've walked out the door super happy with what I've achieved.
That's awesome, mate. And so what advice would you give your younger self if you were starting your career today?
Have a think about what you're good at. And it comes back to your comment earlier about values and things that are important to you as a person, as a human being. Because, when you spend so much of your personal time in a job, it's not only the hard and fast requirements of the job. It's, I think, how you just want to be as a person, how you want to interact with other people, the values that you hold dear to yourself. Are you super ambitious? Do you want to climb a ladder? There's a couple of people who left our team recently that's what they want to do. They want to jump on a fairly accelerated vertical growth for themselves, try and chase some more and more senior roles. I wasn't necessarily of that ilk. I was happier to have a certain job with good income and being happy. That was what ultimately was important for me.
Yeah, the being happy bit's good.
You want to wake up in the morning and go, okay, here's another day. I'm happy. And, might start at a brekkie or taking your kids to school or wherever, but, you can face the day with being okay.
Yeah, that's good advice, mate. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share my favourite memory of the time with you. And you know what this is. But for our viewers, it was the moment. Yes, Ian and I interacted a lot for those listening throughout the years. But one time, I think we went to Tech Ready, which was in Seattle, and we were all intelligent, and we got the nice and early flight from Seattle to Los Angeles. But of course, the flight was delayed by 6 hours or something ridiculous. And there we are on the plane. And this was before, for those who travel into Los Angeles International Airport, you had to go out of the airport to then go through security. So we arrived, and I think we had like 15 minutes or something to get to the airplane.
The Alaskan Airlines
Yeah. And we ran extremely fast. There was a few of us running extremely fast and getting through security, and there was Qantas people like every 10 meters, let them through. And then Ian and I were the last two, the lights flashing, final call. Ian and I were the last two. And I remember people were eyeing off we had a row of 4 to ourselves. People were eyeing it off. We've run in there, we're sweating, we're like out of breath, but we made it. Our suitcases didn't make it. They came the next day.
We were going to die. Hyperventilating and just exhausted.
But we got there. It was a good memory. It was fun. It was a fun memory. So we got home. All right, Ian, thank you so much for joining us today, mate. Really appreciate you taking out the time.
No worries. Really enjoyed it, George. It's good having those recollections. Yeah. Thank you.
No worries, mate. And for everyone else, thank you for watching, and we'll see you at the next one. See ya.
Bye.
Thank you for watching this episode of Simpa Says. If you would like to see more videos, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Or follow if you are listening on a podcast platform to support the channel and join our community.